Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the LinkedIn for Legislators and Legislative Staff 101 webinar. All lines have been placed on listen-only mode. If you would like to submit a question at any time during the webinar, you may use the chat box at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. If you should require assistance throughout the conference, please press *0 on your telephone keypad to reach a live operator. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Samantha. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Samantha Nectarine with NCSL. Thank you for joining us today. The NCSL Young and New Professionals Group is pleased to introduce Erin Moore, Colorado Manager at LinkedIn. We're looking forward to learning more about leveraging our LinkedIn profiles for personal branding, telling your organization's story, and thought leadership. Erin, thanks for joining us.
Samantha, thanks for having me. So Erin Moore, the work I do in Colorado is related to LinkedIn's economic graph. And what the economic graph is basically the combination of all our LinkedIn data. And we use that LinkedIn data to help inform policy decisions on the local and federal level. So today what we will be going through is basically best practices for a LinkedIn profile, and then also some work in thought leadership and ways to leverage LinkedIn to do that. So first things first, talk about establishing your online identity, what that means, and in that, how LinkedIn is different than other social media platforms. Two, developing your professional network, so what that means, ways to be thinking about building a network as you're building one, ways to leverage networks kind of outside of your first, second degree connections, which is something we can discuss, and then obviously establishing that thought leadership piece is what we'll head into at the end. And there is also a PDF version of our publishing playbook available for download.
In the media library.
In the media library. So step one in establishing your professional identity is obviously optimizing your profile. So LinkedIn's a social media platform, and in that way works pretty similar to most, in that you have a profile picture, kind of an introduction to yourself, and all of your content. So as you can see here, there's a couple different pieces that we always want to focus on when we're talking about building an ideal profile. First is the experience section of your profile, and that's simply the jobs that you've held in the past. Now, a lot of people think of LinkedIn as kind of an online resume. And we like to have folks think about it more as a way to tell your professional story. So when you're thinking about adding in your professional experience, not only be listing the positions and the roles that you've had in the past, but also be talking about what you did in those roles, what you learned within those roles, and then how that role helped you get to your next play, as we like to call it, or your next role. So be thinking of kind of telling a story about where you came from, and how you got to the place you are now, especially when it comes to attracting talent to your office, being able to tell a story of how you started from a campaign position or an LC position at a legislator's office to a director position or wherever you're at now, can really go a long way in attracting talent to your office and getting kind of recognized in the community as a thought leader and innovator in the space that you're in. We'll also talk about volunteer experience. So volunteer experience is one of those things about LinkedIn that a lot of people kind of gloss over, but it's a great way to help build a brand. It's a great way to connect with people on similar levels, especially in the political world. Volunteer experience can be really important in terms of building a brand and connecting with people who are like-minded. And then obviously we'll talk about when your summary. So your summary is one of the most important parts of your LinkedIn profile, and that's where you want to really go through your job and career highlights. When it says company and industry notes, that's really what do you do at your company, what do you do in the industry you're in. So obviously here we'll be talking about the legislative work we do, bill writing, things like that. And then personal notes, a little bit about yourself. So who am I, what do I do, and who am I when I go to work every day? So a lot of I statements in a LinkedIn profile, Not only is in that way is it different than a resume, but you want to be leveraging your LinkedIn profile to really humanize yourself, especially, again, as you're trying to attract talent. A lot of folks are intimidated by people in the positions that they want to be in. So really being able to log on, check out their LinkedIn profile, and then see them humanized and understand a little bit about who they are and what makes them tick can really go a long way. So quickly, just take a look at this tile. We call this kind of the head tile at LinkedIn. First things first, customizing your URL. So as you can see kind of under Alan's picture, starts with the www dot. Just customizing the last, after the last slash, it's usually a first name, last name, depending on how common the name is. You might have to add a series of underscores or periods or something like that. But a couple of reasons for this. One, it's easy to point out to somebody as you're in a meeting or something like that. It's also great to put on a business card. So I always recommend that's kind of one of the first things folks do is customize their URL. Second, just taking a look at this head tile again. I know profile pictures aren't necessarily something that people think about too much when building a profile because everybody usually has one, but I always want to point out a couple quick things about LinkedIn profile pictures. One is try and keep it professional, obviously. I know a lot of folks, especially in Colorado, like to ski and snowboard and things like that, and those things are great. But what we really want to think about when adding a profile picture to your LinkedIn profile is if I was going to set up a coffee meeting with you across the street at 7 in the morning when there are a million other people in there, I'd want to be able to pick you out across the room. So just be thinking about a profile picture in that way. Have a colleague with a cell phone take a picture, you upload it, something like that. It doesn't have to be professional. But then also see under Alan's name where it says Scrappy, Innovative Sales Management Professional and People Developer. That's his headline. So most of the time, your headline is going to default to your past or current position. Now, when you're thinking about, again, attracting talent to your office, humanizing yourself, and then building kind of thought leadership, this is an opportunity to go kind of beyond your title and talk about, again, who am I when I go to work. So Alan is obviously in sales and team development, and so he wants to tell a quick story about who he is, right? He's scrappy, so he doesn't necessarily follow the beaten path, can get things done, and is successful in doing so. Be thinking about just adding a couple statements about who you are as a professional and not necessarily just what your job title is. Now, writing a summary. So a summary is one of those things that is tough to do. I have to be honest, I don't have a summary. I've written a summary 4 or 5 times and deleted a summary 4 or 5 times because it's hard for me to talk about myself. So one of the things that we want to think about when we're writing a summary is how that summary tells a story of who we are, how we can humanize ourselves in that story, but then also use it as a way to kind of summarize our professional experience and while looping in how we are as individuals. So as you can see here, quick job and career highlights, those company and industry notes, and then those personal notes. So again, a lot of I statements here. If you're thinking about attracting talent, be thinking about including keywords here. So LinkedIn obviously works very well via keyword search. So folks are looking for like-minded people who know certain areas of government or do work that they want to do. They can be keyword searching those things. So be thinking about what keywords you can include into a summary to be found by folks like that. Volunteer experience and causes. I know we kind of chatted about this briefly and how important it is. But as you can see here, we kind of think of it in ways. So your short-term experience, just like, hey, do you help down at the shelter? I have a buddy. Him and I went down to the shelter on Thursday morning, last Thanksgiving, and help some people out at the soup kitchen. So we want to add those things in our LinkedIn profiles, and then kind of our ongoing involvement. Is there something that we've been doing for a long time? Let's talk about it. And then also, if you are on an advisory council or an advisory board for a nonprofit group or any other kind of CBO, adding those things in the volunteer experience section of your profile. Again, when it comes to brand building, attracting talent, folks who are like-minded, this really goes a long way. And just to mention quickly, all of these things can be ordered on your profile. So if you're in edit mode on your profile, you can drag these sections top and bottom to kind of order them in the way that you want them to be seen. So again, be thinking about how kind of customizable your profile is and how it can change drastically depending on who's telling the story and whose profile it is. So recommendations. Recommendations, one of those things about LinkedIn profiles that everybody loves to receive. So recommendation, think of them as a static reference. So be thinking about getting those recommendations from people that you work with now. It's a lot harder to now be thinking about asking for a recommendation from somebody that you worked with 4 or 5 sessions ago or a couple of years ago. It's a lot easier now to say, hey, we just worked together on this project. We just drafted this bill, and we're successful in in getting it passed. I'd love for you to write a recommendation for me on the file. These things not only show that you are well networked and involved, but also that you are fun to work with, right? Because people don't write recommendations for people that they don't like that much. Be thinking about using, again, recommendations as a way to really humanize yourself and your position and the work you do, and then also stand out in the crowd, because recommendations, because they're tough to receive and tough to do, honestly, not many people have them, so they look really good on LinkedIn profiles. Tips on getting those recommendations: it says request with a soft approach, basically just saying, hey, I know we worked together doing this, that, and the other thing. Really love it if you could write me a recommendation that says something like this, and then kind of give folks an idea of what you'd like it to say. It's a lot harder for somebody to write a recommendation if they don't have much to go off of. And then again, remind them of past project accomplishments. If it's someone that you haven't worked with recently, again, just mention why you want them to write that recommendation and what you'd like it to look like. And then from a variety of different position levels. So that's colleagues, interns, and managers and things like that. So really be thinking about getting, especially if you're thinking about attracting talent to your office, getting recommendations from interns and folks like that you've worked with in the past. That can, again, go a really long way in attracting more talent to your office. So developing your professional network. Everybody knows LinkedIn is a social networking site, and the point of your social networking site is to network. So when you're thinking about building your network, be thinking about it in your first, second, and third degree connections, and then also how you can use those connections to leverage your profile in a way that you think is valuable and can be valuable to you. So when we're thinking about networking, I like to always think about, when I'm building my network, about how this person I'm connecting with can make me better in my current role, and even better, help me stretch outside my role. So there is a setting on LinkedIn where you can sync your LinkedIn profile with your calendar, so that when you have a meeting coming up, it can say, hey, you have a meeting with so-and-so tomorrow. Would you like to check out their LinkedIn profile? And then connect with them afterwards. The reason I do that is obviously for a couple of reasons. One, to get an idea of where somebody comes from, what experience they have, if we have any similar connections. I think that's the big one for me, is if I'm meeting with somebody who I've heard is a great connector, and I need to speak with about the project that I'm working on, and then I realize that we have 3 or 4 or 5 shared connections. It's a great way for me, one, to learn a little more about that individual, and then 2, for me to reach out to the folks that I know and say, hey, would you mind putting in a good word for me tomorrow about the meeting I have tomorrow with this person that we know. So be thinking about your connections really in that way when you're thinking about building connections and then interacting with the connections that you currently have. So this kind of fits more into the thought leadership piece, but also like when you're thinking about sharing insights, posting updates, and sharing articles and things like that, who your audience is. And your audience is your network. So depending on how you have your settings set up, you can let people follow you that you aren't necessarily connected with, and those people are also going to see the insights that you share and then the posts that you make. But the whole reason for this the sharing insights piece is to be thinking about, again, how you can kind of showcase yourself as a thought leader and an innovator in the space, and then also attract talent to your office. And then obviously attract folks that you can work with on certain projects and things that you need to get done. For me personally, I do a lot in workforce. So when I'm talking about things on LinkedIn, I'm talking about what I'm doing with workforce and education in Colorado and the economic graph. And then as those posts kind of go out to the world, I very often get in-mails from folks talking about how they'd like to work with us on a number of different projects that we're working on. So in a way, the way I use LinkedIn makes my job easier for me because I'm instead of me having to do all the footwork kind of comes to me. Joining groups. So these groups, the thing about groups is the folks that you are in groups with sort of act like connections. So that means you can see what they're posting in those groups. You can send them messages, which is something you can't do unless you're connected with somebody. And then also it's a place where you can start a conversation. So if you're in a number of different, in Colorado, there's like a Denver lobbyists and consultants group, and every lobbyist and consultant I know is in that group, and there's often discussion about talent acquisition and saying, hey, so-and-so is leaving in the office, I'd love to get somebody more in or somebody new in, reach out to me and let me know if you have somebody in mind. These things can work as a way kind of around those paid job postings. And is a great way to kind of attract talent in these groups. So following companies, these are really great. I know in Colorado specifically, and I apologize for continuing to mention Colorado, it's just the way I understand things. It's a lot of this. So everybody I know in the state ledge really follows the defense companies to really understand kind of what's going on in the industry, and then how they can interact with those companies to kind of maintain their space in the minds of the leaders in those companies. Thing about company pages is not only are they going to showcase current news, but if they are hiring, they can post job opportunities there. So you can get an idea of kind of where the industry is going, and those things all show up in your news feed. So the great thing about that is, as you go through your LinkedIn news feed in the morning or whenever you go through it, those insights will just kind of show up in your news feed, and you kind of don't have to go searching for them. So companies are interested in companies that are relevant to the work you do in the legislature. Be thinking about when you're trying to follow companies, be thinking about it in that way. Now, the thought leadership piece. So we'll run through this kind of quickly. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions. But this is really going to be about LinkedIn long posting. And the reason I wanted to kind of talk about this is because long form posting is one of those things that, one, people on LinkedIn don't necessarily know a lot about, and two, can be very valuable for a number of different reasons. So a couple of years ago, opened up the publishing platform to all members. It used to only be available to what we called influencers, all the pun intended. And what we did with that was allow folks to share that same space. So now I can publish to the same platform as Arianna Huffington or the president or Bill Gates. And so we all share the same publishing platform, and it all goes into the same place. Now, the thing about your LinkedIn profile is that these posts that you make, these long form posts, are then going to sit at the top of your profile, and I can show a couple of those profiles here in a little bit that are great examples of that. But just be thinking about how you can use long-form posting, again, to really showcase yourself as a thought leader and an innovator and an individual. So we talked about that. So this is kind of a messy slide, but showcases the difference between a long-form post and a short-form post. So those long-form posts on the left, deep dives into topics. Those short-form posts are going to be really those insights sharing, that we discussed a moment ago. But they both go out to your connections and all your followers, and then the global network. So anything you post on LinkedIn as a long-form post especially is available to be seen globally because it goes into our publishing platform that we call Pulse. So anybody that's subscribed to Pulse, and if they subscribe to a certain section, say thought leadership or leadership development or anything like that, if your post falls into that category, then it can be seen on their end of the platform. So the couple things here that you want to think about is that short-form posting is really about not only gaining followers, but also staying in top of mind of the followers that you have. Long-form posting is really about growing your ideas, putting them kind of out into the universe and becoming known for them. And then obviously expanding your professional brand. So when you're thinking about building your brand, be thinking about how your long-form post, every time somebody reads a long-form post from you, they're thinking about you as a leader in that space, as somebody who really knows what they're talking about. And again, these last few slides that we have are all part of that LinkedIn publishing playbook that is available. A lot of these are hyperlinks that you can also click on, so I encourage everybody to download these. So be thinking about your office as or be thinking about your office or what you do in general as a business. So be thinking about who's going to be interacting with your brand, be thinking about who's going to be interacting with your profile and seeing your posts, and what that means. So what's the perception? Right? What's the perception of your office? What's the perception of the job you do? You really have control of that through LinkedIn long-form publishing because you can really take control and say, this is what I do every day, these are the things that I know, and this is how everybody else should understand the work that I do. So the best way to do this is to kind of identify a couple different things about your team. So what do you want to be talking about? You want to be talking about your office. So you can't publish necessarily from your office's LinkedIn page, but what you can do is use individual pages and be strategic about kind of who you choose depending on what areas they work on, and then have them publish. We recommend 1 to 3 times a week. I honestly think that's a little much. So once or twice a month is really a good kind of mid-ground to be thinking about getting some posts out there to folks. And just as kind of an aside here, best times or best days of the week to publish those posts are going to be mornings, like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Mondays, no one's paying attention. Thursdays and Fridays, people are looking to get out of the office. So Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Mornings, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So optimizing content. So images, super important, especially when it comes to attracting talent. People want to see kind of the inside of what you're doing. So are there photos of you and your staff with the governor after a bill signing? Put those things in there. Is it the beginning of session and you have a great photo of everybody at the Capitol? Put those things in there. These things can really attract viewership to your post, and then be authentic. Obviously, again, be thinking about how the ways to humanize yourself. So there's a balance between really being an authority figure in the area and then also really kind of human. So pretty straightforward here. It's just to kind of the right of your profile. Now, the thing about LinkedIn is that it changes, and it will continue to change. We're releasing a new version of the desktop over the next couple months. So this may look a little bit different, but the function will remain the same. So pretty straightforward. The way to do it is on your home page. There's a publish button. Again, it looks different to this, but it's kind of top and to the right of your profile, and then it just gives you the platform through which you can publish your post, and better now than even it was yesterday. So be thinking about how you can, one, start posts. You don't have to finish them, so you can go in. I have about 3 different drafts of posts that I'm working on right now, and you can all save them at the same time. So get in there, start thinking about ideas, and then get those posts up. Super important. Editorial best practices. So these I wanted to include as things to point you to in that PDF that you can upload. You have some really great examples of articles here, and then great ideas of kind of best practices. So things you should do, things you should avoid. A couple things just want to point out here. Generating overly promotional content. So publishing can be a great way to talent unless you're making it obvious that that's exactly what you're trying to do. So be thinking about writing articles in a way that just will attract talent, but isn't necessarily intended to, or a thing to do. But be thinking about it in that way, and then writing in a way that creates a conversation. So always kind of ending a long-form post with a question to kind of facilitate conversation, especially because people can comment on your articles. A great way to kind of keep things going there. So that's it for the slides. Now, do we have time to hop into profiles?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just wanted to show my colleague Rob Humphries' profile as a great example of somebody who's a thought leader and an innovator and a great brand ambassador at LinkedIn. Just want to show you what his profile looks like here. And we are on a little lag, so I apologize if things move slowly, but it looks like we're doing pretty good here. So as you can see, this is where Rob's posts live. These are all the posts he's made. And then as you can see kind of up here, Rob has 8,400 followers, and he doesn't have necessarily 8,400 connections. So those are folks that saw Rob was publishing quality content and decided to follow his profile so that the content shows up in their profiles. Another thing I want to point out is Rob's summary. So I obviously don't necessarily recommend that everybody curse in their summary, but it's a really great example. I'm moving slow here. It's a really great example of a profile, a lot of I statements, and things that really move the needle in terms of really understanding who Rob is. The great thing about his profile, and I encourage people to kind of check it out as we finish up here, is that after you looking at his profile, not only do you realize exactly who Rob is as a professional, but exactly how good he is at his job. So you may not even, unless you've kind of read the summary, just glancing at it, may not realize that Rob is in sales. But Rob is also really good at talking about LinkedIn and talking about education. Education is something really important to Rob. So he flies around the country talking about education and its importance to LinkedIn and to Rob. And so he showcases all this stuff on his profile. So not only the summary, one, how there's a lot of white space, it's not too long, but it gives you a good idea of who he is, but also the media. So pictures from things that he's done and shared. Sorry, it's moving kind of slow. And then just want to, again, show you quick the experience section. So as you see here, this is Rob's experience section, and most often you see experience sections with simply a job title, a company they work at, and then the dates. As you can see here, not only does Rob have details, does he kind of explain what he does as a senior account executive at LinkedIn, but he's also included some media. Go a long way on your LinkedIn profile and be thinking about how you can use these same pictures to tie in the articles that you'll be writing as well. So I do want to leave plenty of time for questions, so I'll just open it up.
Great. Well, we'd love everyone to type their questions into the chat box below. If you can just state your name, where you're from, and whether you're a legislator or legislative staff, we'd love to have questions in. One quick question that we had in the chat box earlier, Aaron, can you tell us all how we follow the Pulse?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so Pulse has changed a little bit. It used to be where you could find it in the toolbar, and you could go to Pulse and it was a completely different page. Now it's integrated more closely into the platform. So you're going to kind of have to Google search, or excuse me, I use Google search. You're going to have to search for certain individuals that you want to follow. Now, obviously start with kind of the Bill Gates and the Arianna Huffingtons of the world. But the best way to really kind of curate what you want to show up is using the app. So the Pulse app is the best place. We've kind of tried to move as much to mobile as possible. So the Pulse app is the best place to find that stuff. But in terms of just following articles and things in general, anytime somebody that you are connected with on LinkedIn publishes to Pulse or publishes to the platform, it shows up in your news feed. So in short, everyone's kind of subscribed to Pulse as they join as members.
Great, thanks, Aaron. We have another question from Rebecca, who's legislative staff from Colorado. Can businesses create LinkedIn profiles? Will you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yep. So we encourage businesses to create company pages instead of individual pages. I can send out an FAQ on how to do that. It's a little different. But companies can create pages. Things change a little bit when you do create pages, just because it's one of those things that, you know, LinkedIn doesn't want folks necessarily using company pages to put job postings in everyone's newsfeed and things like that. So things change a little bit. You can't publish from a company page, but you can absolutely create one.
Great. Well, we will definitely have follow-up so that we can share that information with folks. Okay, we have another question from Jonathan from Illinois. What are some good examples for first-time professionals to be publishing to their page?
I think in terms of, I'll do it a couple of different ways. For your short-form posts or your status updates, as it were, best things to do there are just kind of talk about the work you're doing. So if you were at an event or again you were at a bill signing or something like that, take a photo, tag the governor, and talk about the work you just did. In terms of long form posts, in the publishing playbook, there are, I think it's in a couple slides towards the end, there's some really great examples of long form posts. But in terms of what content you want to be posting, you really want to be posting things that are very specific to the role you're in. So whatever role you're in, whatever you're working on, or whatever's coming up in the next session that you're going to be focused on. I know, in Colorado, I want to do a lot of work with the legislature on the workforce package. So I will be in the future here probably publishing about the work that I'll be doing with the legislature on workforce in Colorado. So really just be focused on what you're doing in that moment, and then kind of how you are an innovator or a thought leader in that space.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Now, just looking at the poll that we've sent out, kind of getting a sense of everyone who's on the webinar, what is the most, what people use LinkedIn for most, and we got networking as, most people use LinkedIn for networking purposes. With that said, what's the best way to build those connections with people that you're meeting with, people that you've worked with in the past that aren't connected with? Do you have any recommendations on sort of sending those invitations, or, who to send them to, who not to send them to?
Yep. So a thing that everybody who has a LinkedIn profile may know about LinkedIn is that every time you add a connection, or especially when you're starting out, LinkedIn is going to ask you if you would like to send connection requests to everybody that you've ever sent an email to. The answer is always no, for a couple different reasons. One, I accidentally hit the yes button when I was creating my LinkedIn profile and ended up being connected with somebody at my property management company who I didn't get along with because they never fixed my refrigerator, and then like somebody I returned a shirt to once. So just be thinking about that when you're starting to build a profile, that LinkedIn is going to ask you if you want to send connection requests to everybody you've ever emailed. Either say no or be very selective, because otherwise your network's going to get a little muddied up with folks that won't necessarily be valuable to your network. Now, first things first, in terms of building a connection or building your connections, is to just start with the people that you know. So a simple search in the search bar with folks that you work with, or folks that you've worked with in the past, colleagues, friends like that. Start there, and then LinkedIn's going to start recommending folks that you may have in common as well. So then as you kind of start to build your network, LinkedIn learns who your network likely is and then recommends that you connect with those people as well. And then as I mentioned earlier also, I connect with everybody I have a meeting with. So as soon as I have a meeting with them, I connect with them on LinkedIn, and it's a way to stay in touch with them. And then again, it may be somebody that I have a meeting with and then forget about, and then I write a long form post 6 months later, and they happen to be working on a similar project, and we can really augment each other's work really well. So really be taking advantage of the fact that like people you interact with on a professional level every day are probably quality connections to have.
That's fabulous. If anyone else has any other questions, please add them to the chat box. We'd love to hear, more from you guys about what you're interested in, how you want to leverage your LinkedIn profiles.
Just one about.
Yeah.
Do it on the quiz?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So just real quick, I noticed somebody asked about the new desktop interface. So in terms, I know that they won't be taking away advanced search, but it will be different. It's mostly different in the way that it looks. So I will say that one of the things that we want to do with it is just make it more user friendly. The current LinkedIn is really built for kind of what we call the power user, and is a lot harder to navigate kind of unless you're on it all the time. So we really want to make it user friendly. Really want to make it more intuitive. But at the end of the day, that hard functionality like advanced search will absolutely remain, because it's one of the most important parts, in my opinion, of LinkedIn.
We have another great question from Brad. Brad is curious about, let me pull this up. His question is, are there any pitfalls for nonpartisan staff using LinkedIn? Some connections may have partisan agendas. Following certain interest groups might imply that you agree with those interest groups. Do you have general guidance or words of caution for what not to do on LinkedIn? I think that's a great question for our audience. Thank you, Brad.
Yep. So I give people words of caution on things like this pretty often. I think when it comes to certain lobbying groups, so I'm connected to conservative lobbying groups and more liberal lobbying groups. So kind of best practice in short, in my mind, is to if you follow one, follow the other. But when it comes to interest groups like the NRA and Planned Parenthood and things like that, definitely be mindful about whether or not you want that to be part of your professional brand. For some folks, I know it doesn't matter, especially partisan staff, depending on their career trajectory. But absolutely be mindful of the fact that you can see those things that you're following on LinkedIn. Now, having said that, you can also decide so you can follow groups on LinkedIn and decide which one of those groups you'd like to be public. So if you do want to see the stuff that the NRA or Planned Parenthood is posting on LinkedIn, but don't want folks to know necessarily that you follow or are interested, in one of those two groups, or you can absolutely keep those things private. But absolutely be aware that these things can help identify or help build your brand for better or for worse.
Great. Thank you, Brad. We have another question from Kathy, who's legislative staff in Maryland. Use this to promote my legislator, a chairman, to make him more visible to certain businesses or industries, and this is public. Could this somehow be made to make the legislator look bad?
So I think this is kind of one of those discretionary things. Kind of as it relates to the long form posting and what you want your intentions to be, is to promote your legislator in a way that is just talking about the work that they're doing. So if the legislator that you're promoting is really interested in working with a certain business in the area, and would like to talk about his experience in whatever industry that is and how he can be helpful in that industry, simply writing a long form post about whatever industry that company is in and what he envisions for the state or his or her district can be a way to really promote that legislator in that area without reaching out and saying, hey, Carrier in Indiana, really like to talk to you. I think just be thinking about really using your profile to generally talk about things that you do on a daily basis and are interested in doing, is the way to really kind of focus your efforts on building that brand and promoting yourself or promoting your legislator in a way that doesn't seem too close to industry. Great.
Well, do you have any recommendations for any legislators on the call who would like to share their brand? Do you suggest that they long-form posts with some of the initiatives that they're working on during the session? Do you suggest, increasing their profile pages to include some of the work that they're doing currently? Would that be in the summary or would that be in the experience section? What do you recommend for our legislators?
Yep. So I really think as a legislator, it's a great opportunity to talk about that storyline that got you from, your high school days to state legislator. So be thinking about, really filling out your experience section to talk about what that path was like. That can be good. I'm not a campaign consultant, but things like that can be really valuable to the community in terms of people understanding who you are and why you are the way you are, and potentially, again, humanizing yourself to the community. In your summary, again, a place where you want to be talking about the things that you do on a daily basis. So a summary is a great place to say, these are the committees that I'm on. These are the things that I'll be working on in this session. These are the things that I got done in last session. Things like that can really be a way where you can eliminate all the Google searching on what folks are on or what bills they've co-sponsored and sponsored this year. Your summary is a place where you can really include those things and really connect with the community at large. I think LinkedIn's a great place to do that because it follows that professional platform idea, but then also gives you a place to kind of talk about what you do. And then when it comes to if you've sponsored a bill or co-sponsored a bill or are working on something that you'd really like to talk about, then using a long post to do that, I think, is one of the most valuable things you could do with your LinkedIn profile.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, if we don't have any more questions from the attendees, we'll give it about one more minute to fill in any questions left in the chat box. But Aaron, it has been a pleasure having you here at NCSL with the Young and New Professionals group to offer all of this great insight to our members. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.